exciting morning of speakers. I was looking at the speakers that follow me, and their domain expertise is vastly deeper and more interesting than anything I could offer. So what I'll try to do is focus my comments more on a VC perspective. On the other half of today's equation, you're going to hear a lot of exciting companies presenting business plans this afternoon. And members of my team were part of the judging panel. And what I'll try to share to the best of my ability, and maybe in Q&A even if we have time, is how we look at this market opportunity and how we look at making investments in the sector. It's something we have to do time and time again in many different industries, many different markets, many different geographies. And so perhaps some of those filters would be of interest to folks here in the audience. Demography is Destiny. This is, I guess, a title that Mary encouraged me to use. It was from a blog post I did, gosh, maybe a few years back relating to this conference, and a testimony that we did, a number of us did to the White House Council on Aging. And I remember at the time learning, and I'm still learning, our whole firm is learning, about the immense size and opportunity of this market. And there will be a number of speakers, and you've already seen some of the splashes of data that drive the point home that this is an incredible opportunity when you look at shifting market needs. And we've had some of our investors, the folks who give us money, like Eli Brogue, who built their entire lifelong career on following the boomers throughout all their needs, starting Coffin and Brogue for starter homes, doing Sun America with reverse mortgages and a variety of other financial products now. And folks who have paid attention to boomers early and often have profited quite successfully within our organization as well. So what I hope to provide today is a VC perspective, or at least a biased perspective from our look at where are the great investment opportunities. I'll start with a description in a very generic sense of what we look for around disruption, to just set the stage in case folks aren't familiar. What is it that makes startups possible, and makes the venture capital work, and then use that as a segue to the opportunity that we see. Just one slide on us for anyone not familiar with DFJ. We are an unusual firm in two respects. We're very early stage and we tend to focus on. So we typically invest in companies that are at the idea stage. They don't usually have revenue. They usually don't have profitability on their balance sheet or income statement. And we increasingly like to look to new markets. So we're always looking for the next great technology, the next great opportunity. That's one area of differentiation, which is very early stage. The second is that we are expanding horizontally around the planet in a way that most other venture firms are just now starting to imitate. But about 10, 15 years ago, there were very few firms doing this to say, globalization is happening, customers are increasingly all over the planet, and startup companies are going to want to connect to partners and customers throughout the world increasingly. So having a footprint in all the major tech centers in the world is the goal we have. We do that through a federated network of funds that in aggregate manage about $6 billion of capital, but in individual small pockets. So they're all mainly early stage funds. Okay, enough about us. What do VCs look for in general? This is our filter on it, but some firms may not articulate it quite the same way. What they probably would agree with almost every venture capitalist for passionate entrepreneurs. That's the beginning, right? You want someone who can get you, jumping out of your seat with excitement about whatever it is that they're proposing. That infectious enthusiasm will serve them well when they're recruiting employees, signing up customers, and partners, and getting people to believe in a dream that's just at the early days of a dream. Now, the parts where it starts to differentiate a bit is that we look for unique ideas. And that may seem obvious, but I haven't heard other venture firms describing that as a core fundamental aspect of their strategy. They might say, we want to make money for our LPs. We want to load up the boat on an obvious good idea, like in the .com craze, all the B2C, e-retailing sites, or all the business-to-business trading exchanges. They might say, well, if there's a good idea, let's do all of them, right? Let's do a lot of them. Let's load up the boat, if you will. And we perhaps get a little more diversification by saying, is this company unlike anything you've ever seen? And so that is a unique, and I should admit, a biased filter that we use, but it helps save our bacon in a lot of cases. And also continually gets us looking for next technology with it. Entrepreneurs that can change the world. It's the motivation for our logo, the delta of the scientist and the globe. I think Steve Jobs may have stated at first that Apple's mission is to change the world, and that's a bold, brash claim, but the most successful entrepreneurs usually have some element, some spark of that dream in what they're pursuing. Now, from those three starting points, there's a bunch of other things VCs will talk about, which is a bit more pedantic and less exciting. Big market opportunities, potential to make a huge return on investment, because most of what we do fails, so you have to make up for it with the winners. And to look at new industries and new markets, to be an early mover, and an early investor in these markets. But one thing they may or may not emphasize is that you have to have disruption. Without disruption, startups won't exist. And by disruption, I mean something that's changing the fundamental landscape of the market. I'll give you some examples. Why do we see that? Well, actually, I'll just answer that question. Why do we see it? Well, a startup, as you know, has no chance against an incumbent at their own game, in general. right? If it's playing by the same rules, trying to sell the same kind of product, and just coming in with very little capital, no brand positioning, no customer referenceable accounts, you're not going to go up against, pick your favorite, head-to-head. You're going to find some low-end strategy to go around the side that change the market dynamic. And usually, you want to ride along with something that's changing in the market. What are some classic examples? New channels of distribution. The internet is the most classic and most far-reaching. It's still being played out. And many of the businesses you'll hear from today will be obviously harnessing. They would be foolish not to harness the internet as a new creative way to reach customers. It could even be something as simple as Draper mail order for Dell competing with Compaq in the channel conflict that induced. For Compaq, that's the disruption of the playing field that makes the new entrant have a chance. Disruptive technological advances, this is what startups rely on in technology businesses, and it tends to be why VCs skewed towards tech investing. Right? There's very little investing by venture capitalists in retail or in areas that aren't close to Moore's Law and the accelerating change that it introduces. Because if you don't have something disrupting the market, like, the iPod and the advances in flash memory making it possible to beat Sony at the Walkman game, for example, you don't have nearly as much disruption. So technology advances are a perpetual source of disruption, and that's why you generally see a tech skew to what VCs do. The last one is interesting, and I think it speaks perhaps to some of the unique elements of the bull market, is that you can have structural changes in markets. This can be deregulation, you can come from financial crises. For example, one of our companies, Tesla, totally different industry, of course, is just giddy with the current financial disruption in markets. What better time to compete with GM and Chrysler? They couldn't have possibly predicted the world as it looks today. But obviously, financial turmoil doesn't just hurt companies. It does hurt big companies. It doesn't necessarily hurt small companies in the same way. And then lastly, most importantly, you can look at major shifts in customer base, And I might argue that the demographic shift that you see is shifting the tastes, proclivities, and nuances of many market opportunities that are lost on many incumbents. So the biggest, strongest firms in media or in e-retailing, where you pick it, they're not paying attention to the boomer segment as they should. And as that market shifts and as buying shifts, and I'll show some examples of this, the opportunity for new entrant presents